Hello folks, and welcome back to a new episode of Tech News. This time on the Thursday. This is episode 27, probably the last episode of 2023. Let's go ahead and jump in. First things first, I am happy to bring the series back after a long break caused by the holidays and the most recent tech launches that needed coverage. That said, let's go ahead and kick this off with our first piece of news here, the well-anticipated upcoming beast in the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. We'll go ahead and go over some of the core details surrounding this upcoming phone, along with details regarding the launch date. And with that said, let's do a recap for those of you not familiar with this upcoming flagship that Samsung is about to drop. The Galaxy S24 Ultra will be boasting a new design. Now, although new, it's not so drastically different from what we have here, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. It's going to be the same design language as you see here, but this time around, it will be featuring a titanium build, which is the same route that Apple took, by the way. We're going to have a few new colors here with this flagship, which include the titanium black, titanium gray, titanium yellow, and titanium violet. As you can see, it has titanium in every single one of the colorways. The display is also going to see a design change here. We will now get a flatter screen, right? So the display is going to be flatter than what we have here, which is a mix of a slightly curved and slightly flat display, right, on the S23 Ultra here. So the S24 Ultra is going to be completely flat, but the size is going to remain the same, right? So same display size at 6.8 inches with, some specs that have been updated to the max. The display, for example, the peak brightness on this new display on the S24 Ultra is going to be higher at 2500 nits, right, when it comes down to peak brightness, right? So we're looking at something that is insanely bright. Remember, the S23 Ultra is loaded at up to 1750 nits in terms of peak brightness, which, by the way, was already amazing. And clearly it'll be much brighter than any iPhone ever made, which, by the way, is something that I told you about, right? I told you that the S23 Ultra was going to be the best phone ever made. And this became fact, right? A phone that was made 8 months prior to its main competitor, which is, of course, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, still beat the 15 Pro Max, having been born 8 months prior. Now that the S24 Ultra is around the corner and is set to be better than this phone right here, than the S23 Ultra, which is the phone of the year, what it all means is that Apple is now behind this competition thing by pretty much 2 generations, the S23 Ultra and the S24 Ultra. But I digress here. Anyways, the upcoming S24 Ultra, like I mentioned, is set to bring in a lot of things, and you should be expecting top specs available all over it. For the display, for example, as you most likely imagined already, it's going to be a dynamic AMOLED display, Quad HD Plus, support for high refresh rate at up to 120 Hz, HDR10 Plus support, and so much more. Now, the camera is one of those things where we weren't really sure what was happening, right? It's definitely set to be upgraded, but there's been a little bit of back and forth about the camera on the upcoming S24 Ultra here. With the initial leaks, there were reports that the S24 Ultra will not be boasting the 10 megapixel 10x periscope lens found on the S23 Ultra. Then other leaks dropped and said that it was actually going to be boasting that same 10x periscope lens, but then newer leaks dropped claiming that that 10x periscope lens was going to be replaced by a 50 megapixel camera. And with this new lens, we should be expecting 5x optical zoom that will record in higher resolution and show more details. So in summary, the S24 Ultra will be featuring a 200 megapixel primary sensor, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, a 10 megapixel telephoto, which, by the way, is everything that we have on the S23 Ultra so far. And then on top of that, we'll be getting that 50 megapixel camera that's going to be able to push out 2, 3, 5x 10x optical zoom. Now let's move on to the internals. The internal specs are also just as impressive. According to, leaked information so far, we have 12 gigs of RAM, available worldwide for all configurations. Obviously, we're still waiting for Samsung to come out and confirm the different breakdown of the different configurations that they will have on the S24 Ultra here. The phone itself, of course, will be powered by the mother of all flagship Android chipset, the all-new Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. If it is anything like what we saw at all with the Gen 2 that we have here on the S23 Ultra, or obviously more powerful as expected, right? You would expect this newer generation to be more powerful. I could just barely imagine what this thing is going to be capable of doing. And by the way, still talking of chipset here, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is going to be available on the S24 Ultra. That's what we know so far. But as far as the S24 and the S24 Plus, it looks like we're going to have a mix, right? Some of them, depending on the region, will be rocking the Snapdragon chipset as well. But for others, the regular S24 and the S24 Plus will be rocking an Exynos chipset, specifically the Exynos 2400. Now, there are many more upgrades to this version of the, S Ultra model, including software-related features. Out of the box, it will be running Android 14 along with One UI 6.1. That's the newest OS and, newest skin. Which reminds me, by the way, to say that if you own a Galaxy device, make sure that you check, to see if it's eligible for the newer version of One UI and go ahead and get your device up to date. As far as user experience goes, Samsung is actually making a push towards AI, just like most big companies out there. AI is the new thing, right? We saw what Google is doing with it on the Pixel line, right? Google is essentially setting the gold standard on it for mobile tech. And like I said, many other giants will join. So Samsung has what it tags as Galaxy AI coming to their new devices. And I just hope that it's good, right? Really hope that it's not as mediocre as, Bixby has been, in the world of virtual assistant. But anyways, I digress here. With all of this said, just know this. The Samsung Galaxy S, specifically the Ultra line, actually is setting the new standard of what a flagship device is supposed to be, of what a productivity device is supposed to be. Let me specific. A productivity phone or flagship phone. It's setting up that new standard. And as far as mainstream pro phones go, the way I personally see it, it is pretty much by itself in that field. The Ultra line from Samsung is the only phone that's really up there in that field when it comes down to that pro level phone. Now, don't get me twisted. I'm not claiming that this particular line, right, the Ultra line from Samsung phones is the best. I'm not saying that it is the best for everyone. What I'm saying is that it's a better comprehensive package. It offers a bit more than the nearest competitor has to offer with its flagship devices. Again, that's my personal opinion, having used this and its closest competitor, my iPhone 15 Pro Max here. I, along with the vast majority of people in the tech community, agree that when it comes down to pro lines, this is the guy, this is the line. Anyways, let's go ahead and change gears here. So the date, right? We actually have a launch date on this upcoming beast. And what makes it even more special is that this will be announced a whole month earlier than what we are accustomed to, right? We typically see this drop in February, but in 2024, this is set to drop on January 17th. That's a whole 3 weeks and some change from today. And also from what we know, it will be taking place in California. So make sure to stay tuned. But anyways, I think this is a good point to stop. This is all I had for this edition of Tech News. Of course, I will have more on the next episode, which is probably going to be starting next year. I will stay updated so that you are updated. Of course, up until that next episode, as always, stay safe out there.